I sat next to this man last Monday, that is 6 days ago, at an anti-Semitism conference in Sydney, Australia. And tonight, he was shot.
I survived October 7th. I lived in Israel the last 13 years. We came here only 2 weeks ago to work with the Jewish community, to fight anti-Semitism, to fight this bloodthirsty, ravaging hatred.
That's why you're here?
That's why I'm here.
And you don't know how you got shot or hurt?
I know. I got hit in the head. I'm bleeding.
You lost a lot of blood.
I've lost blood.
So we all remember a couple weeks ago when Candace posted this. And then a couple weeks before that, Trump posted this. And stay with me now. And then we have Pam, wait, what's her last name? That's right. What's the name of the beach in Australia that the shooting just took place? What is she responsible for? The Attorney General, responsible for disclosing and unveiling those files. Yeah, it's probably nothing, but speaking of it's probably nothing, did you know this? That 2 of the students at Brown University also survived other school shootings? What are the chances? Coincidentally, there was also a man who was injured in Australia who also survived a previous attack. He's just a pro-Israel human rights lawyer who you obviously have to post when you're on your last dying breath, because if you didn't take a picture and post it, did it even happen? So let me just read about this guy. It's probably nothing. Probably nothing. At once, I'll say it again. This is greater than politics. It's a spiritual warfare. If you have not gotten right with God, what are you waiting for?
This is the vision of one of the gunmen being tackled, I believe by a hero, a civilian, not a police officer, not a paramedic, but a civilian who has rushed the gunman from behind, seized his weapon, turned the weapon on him, and has had the courage to not only do that, but the presence of mind not to open fire in that situation. And now he is no doubt calling for backup, getting this man surrounded and making sure there is no chance he can get away. But we do believe the vision you are seeing there is of the gunman. A second gunman, Tom, is that your understanding? That is a second gunman up on the bridge, now trying to protect the other gunman who has just been stripped of his weapon.
NBC4 Investigates has learned one of the locations included this home in Glendale. A federal complaint states, quote, the plan contemplated planting backpacks with IEDs or improvised explosive devices at 5 locations across Southern California, targeting U.S. companies. The Department of Justice and the FBI announced today the arrests of 4 people they say were plotting to set off bombs in the Los Angeles area on New Year's Eve. Federal officials say they were members of the Turtle Island Liberation Front,
a far-left, anti-government, domestic terror cell.
Federal officials say search warrants were conducted at several locations across the nation and in Southern California. Law enforcement sources tell NBC4 Investigates searches in Glendale, South LA, and Torrance are connected to the case.
Thankfully, that plot has now been foiled.
These bombs were to blow up at the same time on midnight this New Year's Eve.
Authorities did not release details of the locations or the names of the companies. First Assistant United States Attorney Bill Asaley says one of the leaders of the organization had allegedly created a detailed bombing plot.
Carol and her co-defendant, Zachary Page, led the effort to obtain and build the bombs and to recruit others to join in their plot. Carol also made clear her desires. She said, quote, what we are doing will be considered a terrorist act.
Together we have prevented a potential tragedy and reaffirmed our shared commitment to safeguarding our communities.
Federal officials shared this surveillance video today of a remote site in the Mojave Desert where they say the group attempted to construct and test bombs.
They had everything they needed to make an operational bomb at that location.
We learned that the alleged co-conspirators had recently started acquiring precursor chemicals and other items necessary to accomplish this task.
A federal complaint states the FBI arrested all four last Friday before they were able to build the devices.
Shortly before 9 o'clock tonight, the FBI SWAT team executed court-authorized search warrants at a storage unit facility in Hampshire Road in Salem, New Hampshire.
An individual was identified as Claudio Neves Valenti, date of birth, and he was a 48-year-old man. He was a Brown student, he was a Portuguese national, and his last known address was in Miami, Florida. And I will tell you that he took his own life tonight.
We are 100% confident that this is our target. And that this case is closed from a perspective of pursuing people involved. Yeah, so he's not here on a student visa now. He was initially, and then he applied for and received lawful permanent resident status in September of 2017.
I'll just tell you that a lot of the information and evidence that we ended up gathering linked us to a connection up in Massachusetts, but obviously at the MIT.
Yes, it is true that Mr. Valente was a physics student. Also, we know that the MIT, the victim there, was in that discipline as well. It is believed that in Lisbon, that those two individuals attended the same university in Portugal.
All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from, and I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today, I just want to do a quick lesson on, the two, incidences that took place, the one in Australia and then the one at Brown University. If you, seen what took place, in the news recently, then you know what I'm talking about. The two, shooting incidences, which, we know, those of us that are in the know, we know certain of these incidents that happen, they're usually a, false FLAG, attack, because when I initially seen the video of the incident in Australia, where you had the individual, which, I clipped that, in this video, you had one individual run up to, one of the shooters and, snatch his gun out of his hand, but meanwhile, like a little, distance away, you have the other shooter, like just, it doesn't seem right. You also had, the picture of the guy, getting makeup put up on him, the fake blood, what he goes on the news. And they also said that this dude was involved in another incident. I forget, which incident, they say he was involved in. But most of these people that are involved in incidences like this are usually crisis actors. Now, are there usually, casualties that actually happen, that people actually get injured or, lose their lives? Yes. But for the most part, we know that, these particular things that happen, they're usually set up, in order to bring about, something, more sinister, So I'm just going to bring out a couple of scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying and straight to the point. And that's just what I'm going to inside of this, man. Something ain't right, about either of these situations, especially the Australia situation, man. It's just like, certain brothers, have said, certain elder brothers have said, man, Esau, he's getting sloppy. And then of course, they had to, throw Amalek in there because again, they want to make it seem as though, everybody's trying to attack them. This whole anti, Amalek thing, they're still pushing it heavy. So I'm going to start with the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 11. It says, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. And indeed, we're not ignorant of this man's devices, man. So, we know he usually does things like this to bring about, a certain executive order, if not an executive order, just to bring about, more control, because we know at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, him bringing about his new world order, which he's only gonna, get so far with that, so who knows what else is going to take place, just like, Sluggy. So we know that, the particular things that take place today, that's usually what is leading up to, him bringing about that, because as we know, with these particular incidences like this happen, what he's going to, try to enforce more gun control on what law-abiding citizens, that have, licenses, to carry, legally, right? So that's really what they want to do, is to unarm, the citizens, so that way, once he, sends the troops in, in every major city, because right now they're only, in certain cities, as far as I know, Chicago, Memphis, I think Baltimore as well, but eventually he's going to have, National Guard. If not specifically the National Guard, he's going to have his own private, security or military, rounding people up, to haul them off. And we know that we're in a time where truth has become the new hate speech, because we know this man pushes, lies. That's one of his weapons, one of his greatest weapons, deception, but again, we're not ignorant. We know that this man is getting sloppy. He runs the same, play every time, and again, it's 2 weeks left in December, Now I've been saying, something was going to happen, at the end of the year, and then you have this happen. We'll see what happens, what takes place within, these next couple weeks. But, we just know that 2026 is going to be a very, very interesting year, man. We're hoping, it's the year where this man finally pushes, the mark of the beast, which is spoken of in the book of Revelation, the 13th chapter, verse 16 to 18, the mass implementation of the mark of the beast, which is the RFID microchip. We know we're getting closer to that time because, again, he's setting up his digital infrastructure. You can see he's set up these, AI data centers, which they're using this to come up against us. When I say us, I mean, the American people as a whole, but primarily, the men of the Lord, man. They're using this as a weapon. That AI is going to be used as a weapon to come up against us, to frame us, to make it seem as though, we're terror, finish the word, as, we're the bad guys. But in reality, we're just, teaching the Bible, So I'm going to get the book of Micah chapter 2 and verse 1. It says, "Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it, because it is in the power of their hand." And right, this is what, Esau Edom does, the elites in particular, Salakia for the background noise, man. Wait for this fire truck to pass, man. All right. But the elites, in particular, they have their, their secret meetings, their secret councils, where, they come up with these evil, plots and schemes, ultimately to come up against the nation of Israel, but to enslave the entire world as well, because that's what they want. They have a God complex, man. They want to be like the Most High, And it also says that, so I'll grab that real quick in the book of Isaiah chapter 14. And verse 13, it says, for thou, well, I'll start at 12, Isaiah chapter 14 and verse 12, it says, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? And right, we're seeing, the steady downfall of this place, America, Babylon the Great. And we're also seeing the downfall of the nation of Edom as well. We're seeing it. So this man, he's fallen, but when it says, Lucifer, which, just means light bearer, it's talking about, the elites, because people will read this and think it's talking about, Satan. Like, no, Lucifer isn't a name, it's a title, but again, they're the enlightened ones on the left-hand side, so they know about the particular things that are going to happen before they happen. They're orchestrating, a lot of these things that take place. Ultimately, we know it's the Lord, doing everything. But, on the left-hand side, it's them, doing these particular things. Verse 13. Excuse me, Slakia. It says, for thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of Yahweh. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation and the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. And right, Esau, Edom, as a whole, the nation of Edom, but again, in particular, the elites, of Edom, they have a God complex. They want to be like the Most High. This is why they do these particular things, which, they have their, their satellites in space, the International Space Station, these various things, right? This is him saying he wants to be like the Most High, because that's ultimately what, the New World Order is about, them being all knowing, all seeing. They want to be in control of everything like the Heavenly Father is, man. This is why, again, the Heavenly Father is omnipotent, which he's all powerful, but they'll never reach that. Though they want to, they'll never get that, So I'm just going to end it with this, because we clearly see that this is what, these particular events are leading up to, So that's the book of Revelation, chapter 12 and verse 12. And it says, therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. For the earth is Slakia, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And right, with these, particular shooting incidences that took place, which, we're still going to keep our eyes on, because again, just they don't seem right, which nothing Esau does with these particular events ever seems right. But this, it doesn't look right at all, but we know that he'll try to use situations like this to, come up against the people, because the United States government has already waged war against its citizens, if you people didn't know that already, so he's, when I say he, number 47, he's getting ready to do just that, to send, his military in to come and get us, because he knows, that's really what the plan is, man. He wants to disarm the citizens. So again, this incident could bring about more gun control. I'm not saying this is fact, it's just speculation of it happening, because of the incident in Australia, which you're not hearing that much about here in America. But again, you had the incident at Brown University. Again, both of these situations don't seem right. So again, we're just going to keep our eyes on it. We know that we're in that time where Esau, Edom is going to come down upon us, where he's going to come after us, and seek to, enslave everyone, which a lot of people are going to bow the knee and get the mark of the beast, but the remnant of the nation of Israel, they're not going to bow the knee. They're going to resist this man's mark. Some of the elect will, be beheaded, but that's their testimony. They'll be risen up upon the second coming of our Lord Yahweh Shai, but they won't get all of us. When I say us, the hopefully elect, because I myself, I hope I'm of that number, So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the others of Great Millstone, who are not just true from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till the next time I say, Shalom.